concerned about the welfare of children is really the reason that I jumped into this fray, because I realized that their future is in jeopardy if we continue down the path that we're going down now.
Republican presidential candidate Dr. Ben Carson speaking in Iowa over the weekend as recent reports suggest turmoil within his campaign. The good doctor has lost 4 senior campaign officials and they have not been replaced. And several of his supporters are worried that changing this inner circle will fumble what should be a great opportunity. Joining us now via Skype from Birmingham, Alabama, Armstrong Williams. He has served as an advisor to Dr. Carson, and of course Armstrong is the host of the eponymously named Armstrong Williams Show. We thank you for your time here on Newsmax Prime, Armstrong.
Thank you, Congressman. It's always a pleasure speaking to you.
So I pick up a story from the Washington Post over the weekend that talked about turmoil in the campaign. There were some resignations of senior staff. What's the real story behind those resignations?
Well, you know, early on, it was understood that once Dr. Carson, after he announced his exploratory committee, and when he officially would announce his campaign in early May from Detroit, that there would be some changes. Terry Giles, who was the chairman from the beginning, decided that he wanted to do things in other areas like the super PAC. And I don't know how much you understand the rules and guidelines of super PACs or the FEC. It's not something that Dr. Carson can be involved in. And the Washington Post article mentioned turmoil with the super PACs. It's not in any role, any perspective that I can share with you that Dr. Carson was ever aware of, because we're prohibited from getting involved. Dr. Carson has a strong grip on what goes on with his operation every day. I don't know anyone who's adapted more and shown more leadership, not only just with his vision, but in terms of where he would like to go. He realizes that the momentum is building every day. They're raising money. They have over 120,000 donors, and it's just incredible. And the word chaos, I mean, as far as, and you've heard him say this himself over the weekend, if this is chaos, bring it on. In fact, Congressman, things could not be better for Team Carson.
And we understand the whys and wherefores and the law about super PACs being truly independent, not being a part of a campaign. So I appreciate your point there. Armstrong, another word the doctor has used in response to some of these reports from places like the Washington Post, he calls it sabotage. Is this a case of the media engaged in wishful thinking against a social conservative?
Well, listen, Congressman, as a broadcast owner and someone who's been a member of this fine media institution for a long time, you know, the Washington Post, as far as we're concerned, have been very balanced and fair with Dr. Carson and their portrayal of him and reported on him since he launched this historic bid for the White House. And oftentimes, if you're speaking to someone within an organization, and while they may say to you, they're moving on and this is what they want to do, obviously, I don't think that the Washington Post just pulled these concerns from out of left field. Obviously, someone within our own organization, unbeknownst to us, we're trying to peddle a story out there, and we still can't get to the bottom of it. But it's just unfortunate when the media gets an opportunity to talk to the other side, people in the campaign, and they forcefully tell them there is no truth to this, not even a hint of it. We have no idea what you're talking about. And they continue to proceed to print the story, to write the story, given the credibility of the most important political paper in the country. So we would fault them in terms of the fact that they did get Dr. Carson's team on the record, and still they decided to print the story that they printed, which is unfortunate, which is just so erroneous, actually.
And they also talked with you, Armstrong, if memory serves, they talked about the fact that and I'm paraphrasing what you had to say, that Dr. Carson was not someone who would micromanage the goings-on in a campaign, that he was available usually weekly on Sundays to go over the schedule. And after you said that, it seemed that the reporter writing the story said, well, the conclusion is if he's only spending an hour with his staff every week, it raises questions. Were you surprised to read the way your quotes were cast in that coverage?
You know, we all have something to learn. In fact, Dr. Carson took me to task for that remark by reminding me that I am really out of touch with what goes on in the campaign. I'm not involved in every day in the conversations and the meetings that he has, and it was a fair point. I was only speaking from my perspective, but he reminded me, as well as the campaign, that he's intensely involved. He speaks with them constantly. There are constant meetings. He's constantly visiting in Washington, D.C. So I can't blame the press for taking my remarks and making it appear as though that Dr. Carson was distant and not engaged. It was my interpretation, and it was my remarks that led the press to believe that, and I was totally wrong and totally out of touch, because it is true, given my schedule and the television stations and the broadcast commitments. I'm not that involved in the campaign. I'm only involved when it comes to the business of Dr. Carson.
We do appreciate the fact, Armstrong, you've corrected the record. We're coming back.